So I was listening to the radio this last weekend. Actually, I was driving around with my son, and I
Congratulations!
Heard, thanks. One of my favorite shows is On the Media, and they had this really great story about this guy by the name of Sal Payne.
Sal Payne.
Yeah, and he has this company called BioRecovery Corporation. And during the whole the intensity of the Ebola scare, Ebola's coming to America. Ebola's here, right?
By the way, I've noticed that since the elections, Ebola is gone. It stopped.
See how easy it was to
There's
cure?
no such thing as Ebola. No one's talking about it, so it does not exist.
All we had to do was stop talking about it to cure it. We should stop talking about other things.
What are you saying?
So anyway, I'm going to bring it up again, and now there'll be Ebola everywhere. But it's to make a really important point.
Right,
and,
I got it.
And I hope that everyone really understands that I didn't bring Ebola back just for, willy-nilly or a joke or something silly. It's to make an important point.
Bring Ebola back. Booyah.
Boom. That's where you drop the bass, right after bring Ebola back. 'Cause everybody wants a big old Ebola.
So this guy, Mr. Payne.
I'm Jason. That's Bill. Welcome to the Bill and Jason Show. So this guy, Sal Payne, right? So he is all over the media as the chief. People call him the chief safety officer. Some people call him the chief security officer of this BioRecovery Corporation, talking about like what it takes to clean up after an Ebola, Ebola infected room. And so they're going to
Does it take more than...
They're going to do the cleanup.
So
hazmat suits.
A lot of bleach.
I don't know, but this is what he was going on, like Fox News, CNN. He was like on every media outlet. Live.
So he's the guy who knows exactly what to do when you get some Ebola in your house.
He was the
how
guy.
to wipe it up.
Right, to put everyone at ease.
Right.
And come to find out, he's a con man.
What?
And he actually conned this company out of this gal. I think it was her uncle or husband had owned it, and he had died, and he had conned the company from her. So then he owned it. This BioRecovery Corporation.
He stole a company from somebody?
He didn't steal it. He just conned it out of her. You know what I mean? So it was like, she really got virtually nothing for the actual.
Okay, so he owns this company.
Yeah.
This biohazard cleanup company.
And he's going on the news everywhere being the expert on how to clean up on Ebola.
Why wouldn't he be?
And getting contracts and all that sort of thing.
Right.
Only to basically dupe, charge fees, and head out of town.
Wait a minute. You're saying that he bought this company, but he had no idea how to clean up after Ebola?
No.
But all the newspapers, all the television stations,
he was the expert.
They all had him on to say, so how do you clean up an Ebola spill?
Right, because he was from this company. Now, he did have the company name, which did get the credit for doing an anthrax cleanup for the ABC studios a while back. Okay, but that had nothing that had to do with the deceased owner, not this guy.
Oh, so he didn't clean up the anthrax; the other company did.
The previous owner did, yeah. And this wasn't his first rodeo, Sal's first rodeo, in terms of exploiting the media and their lack of due diligence in like checking the background of their guests that they have on for experts. Because during the subprime crisis, where everybody's getting ripped off by mortgage companies, he was an expert on getting your loan modified. And the whole thing was a cover, and people would call it, pay fees, and he'd collect the fees, and then he wouldn't deliver anything.
What?
But he was all over the media as being the expert, and that's how he marketed, was through the media.
So wait a minute,
doing publicity.
He was conning people out of more money that had been taken from them in the subprime thing, and he was taking their money with his con job, yet he was convincing television stations to put him on to be an expert on how to take care of your problem.
How to clean up an Ebola mess. And this how
my head is going to explode here.
He disguised himself by changing his name from P-A-Y-N to P-A-I-N.
What?
Well, because a simple Google search would have revealed that Sal Payne, P-A-Y-N-E, which I don't know why you wouldn't have. I don't know. Nobody must have done a simple Google search because they'll say, "Did you mean?"
Yeah, right.
This guy? Oh, well, no, that's a total different Payne.
Right. He doesn't, just because he looks the same doesn't mean. And he was all over the news, so there's pictures of him everywhere.
Right, yeah. And he got busted for the whole subprime thing.
So is the story about this guy and what a con man he is, or is the story really about what idiots run media today?
The actual story I was listening to was a conversation about questioning how can somebody con the media who is supposed to be parsing out stories so that we
Right.
can understand it, and telling that we rely on to be able to tell the difference between truth and fiction.
Right.
Like you.
Because I can't go to ABC and say, my house is on fire. He's going to call my neighbor to be sure. Is his house on fire?
Is it really on fire?
Right.
I mean, I see smoke and I smell flames.
But I mean, you have to have a couple sources to be able to report it, don't you?
Yeah, you would think. So this particular story was about both of those sort of things. But what the funny thing is, what got me thinking about it wasn't necessarily the overarching commentary about the media, but what it got me thinking about is like the question that so many DJs have, and not just DJs, because I work with like nonprofits and things like that. They're like, how
do we clean up after Ebola?
Exactly.
I've never had a DJ ask me that.
Well, it's Ebola what?
A bowl of oatmeal.
Exactly.
I spilled a bowl of oatmeal.
Just a magic eraser. No, it's how do you get publicity? How do you get written up in the newspaper? Because I think a lot of people assume that, like, well, once you're most outstanding enough, they'll discover you.
Yeah, if you're the best, if you win an award, if you're the best looking or the best spinner or the best, they'll just come looking for you to do a story on you.
And that's a big maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they will. And it's even a far-reaching maybe. And the funny thing is it's really, in terms of getting press, it seems enigmatic. How do you get them to be interested and all that sort of thing?
Right.
And so.
And who am I? Why would they come and talk to me? Because
why should I get?
I can never get on television.
A news story.
How does that guy get on television and I didn't?
And it's actually a lot simpler than anybody thinks.
Apparently, because the guy who doesn't know nothing about Ebola got on national television to say, I know how to clean up Ebola, when he really didn't.
He got a company name that did something and then put himself out there as an expert and got tons of coverage and
he was a big liar.
Tons of business. He was a big liar, not a legitimate. Oops. Don't step on your cord.
You know what I'm saying.
Not a legitimate guy.
Who steps on his cord?
Not a legitimate guy like all the viewers of the show that have companies that are like delivering entertainment and making a difference for couples or
a company that actually cleans up after Ebola, or a company that really understands
expertise.
And has expertise in how to help you out of financial crisis. Instead of a guy who says he does,
right,
and he's lying about it. How did that guy get? I'm sure at all the companies that know how to clean up after hazardous waste, it's probably saying, how'd that guy get on there? How come they didn't call us?
They're asking the exact
same thing.
Question.
A DJ, when you see a DJ getting mentioned on the news, and they say, and I can sit there and say, well, but he just started. I mean, he's been doing it for 2 days. I've been doing it for 30 years. How come they didn't call me?
Right. Wouldn't they have researched and found that out?
Right. Why wouldn't they check out to make sure that this guy's an actual expert instead of, oh, you're an expert? Well, then okay.
Right.
So how does that happen?
So I don't know how that happens. I can't answer that. But what I thought would be a really interesting, great topic is because we've both worked in the media,
right,
and we both had been on the receiving end of press releases and information and things like that, and looked at, as radio hosts and that sort of thing, and looked at how we reacted to different things,
right,
as well as my relationship I've had with my producers and other producers at a larger station and a larger market, and just the kind of knowing how it's working in the office,
right,
how people are talking about what
how do we choose one press release over another,
and how that happens. So I thought this would be something that would be awesome to reveal on the show for not only disc jockeys but anybody that wants to get press for anything.
Right. From our perspective, which is we're experts
on everything. I mean, on nothing.
With opinions on everything.
I messed up our tagline. We clearly need a mental break. So let's take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Bill and Jason Show.
Okay, so getting to the basics.
Right.
Okay, so first of all, the question is well, why don't they just notice you?
Right.
Okay. You've got to remember, especially about the media environment now.
Television, radio.
You name it. Anybody that's producing news, online news sources, whatever, it is the most. They're the most overtaxed. Each person has 5 jobs to do, so they barely have time to do the jobs that they have
of getting the information written down and put out there.
Right, and choosing what stories to write,
Right.
and what stories to follow, what's newsworthy, what they should do something, what's relevant, and that sort of thing. So keeping that in mind, if you just like send in a press release and expect them to go like, "Hey, I was just sitting here and I saw your email came in,"
Right.
with 300 others today, it's like out of view. And just when you think about like all the stuff you get from, like I get like Washington Post emails, and I get emails from all kinds of stuff I subscribe to,
Right.
Just fills up my box,
Right.
And so they're getting the same thing. They're getting a deluge of press releases.
People who want attention, people who say they're experts, people
Exactly.
that want a story written about them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or have something newsworthy to share. So the first thing to remember is if you want somebody to pay attention to your story,
Right.
you have to pick up the phone and call them.
Oh, yeah.
Like you just basically call, and you don't have to know who at first. You could just call and say, "I have a story that is." I think it's like someone in the lifestyle section. Kind of get an idea of where what section your story
where
would
they
be most
where they'd
appropriate.
put your story, what kind of subject matter it is,
Right.
who would be most interested in helping to produce it.
Who would I talk to? And they'll say, "Oh, you talk to Jane," and so then you transfer them.
Jane takes
over
all
to,
the DJ press releases.
to Jane, and so then you either get. Ideally, you want to get Jane on the phone and say, "Hey, I have a story idea for you. It's this. Well, you create, let's say, it's wedding related,
Right, okay.
So and it would be Bill Hermann, and you would say like, well, I create these really amazing introductions that are
Right.
really that really change the whole experience of a wedding. It's really a different way to experience a wedding that
Right.
people don't typically have.
What I have to
it's
take
new
into
and exciting,
right, and with that press release, I need to take into consideration when I'm sending it, when they're looking for stories about stuff like that. Like
Right.
if it's wedding introductions, then there is a cycle. If you have, it's not too tough to pay attention and notice when they cover wedding stuff. And they do every year, a couple times a year.
Right.
When they cover it around your neck of the woods.
Right. So you talk to them, and then you also look at when is the time of year that they want to talk
Right.
and write about that kind of stuff. For magazines start really early, like 4 months out, sometimes 6 months out before that issue comes out. You're going to want to be talking to them about having a story done or included in that.
Regular
If it's-
monthly magazine.
Yeah, if it's online or it's a newspaper or things like that, then it's going to be newspaper. What's that? Or radio even. Then you could be like in the month of, like in January, you could be
Right.
sending a press release out. And then take a look at like what people are talking about, what's in the news, what's relevant, what's interesting, and see if there's something you can piggyback onto in order to actually get traction on your story. Because to just say, "Hey, I'm a DJ, will you do a story about me because I'm really good?" That's not really news.
No, it really isn't, and especially the local people are always trying to attach themselves to the biggest national and or international thing about that subject. And usually when it's weddings, it's what big celebrity's getting married, or what big tragedy happened around a wedding overseas.
Or it could be as simple as a celebrity coming through that's wedding related, like David Tutera has been on a
tour lately, yeah.
And I know this because there's a lot of our colleagues that have been like doing, pairing up with him and doing work with him as far as this show that he's filling, doing this tour. Okay,
right.
So if he's coming to your town, that's a great opportunity to do a, by the way, local relate.
Right.
And why would they want to talk about you in the community if they could talk about David Tutera? The answer is they want to talk about both.
Right.
Keep in mind that when shark scares were the biggest thing, Minnesota media were coming up with local angles on sharks.
Right, and we have lakes
There
with
are
no
sharks in Minnesota whatsoever. So, keep that in mind. So you want something to attach it to. Another example too, you don't have to, but it's going to help you to get your story, to get them interested in
Right.
doing your story and running your story. The next thing to keep in mind is that let's see, attaching. Oh, I was going to give an example.
Right.
So I recently worked with a nonprofit, and they're an adoption service.
Yes.
And so they're like, we want to get media for our fundraising event. It's like,
And we don't know how to do it. We've never been able to get media. We've tried every year. How do you do that? And you kind of went, well, that's not as tough as you think it is.
Well, they knew that I worked at the radio station a number of years ago. They're like, oh, you have connections. Great. Then you'll get us media. As if because I worked there,
Right.
then everybody would want to run any story that I've got.
Right.
If that was the truth, I'd have a PR company, and I'd be raking it in right now. It's
Right.
like, oh, Jason called. Bill, that's Evening News is full. All of his clients. So it's not. And so I'm looking at like, well, what do they do? Well, one of the things that I discovered working with them is that they have like reinvented foster care because like the foster care system like the state has is really, it doesn't work. It's not meeting the need of actually finding permanent homes. It's just ensures kids have food, shelter, and clothing until they're 18, when they can be released. And of course, when you're 18, then you're an adult and know everything you need to know. And
right. And this nonprofit you're working with has found a way to kind of reinvent that to make it work.
To really make it so that it's really centered on finding families. Okay?
So you called up the newspaper and you said, this story's it. Do this.
So the hook was this, because when I was asking her about like, what is the urgent need? Because we were talking about how to put together their ask to raise money and have people go like, we have to give now and give a lot.
Right.
So there's got to be something really compelling. And there was a story about a girl that was like 12 years old who had been placed in 14 different homes in her lifetime. Wow. At age 12.
Okay.
Which is like, that's unimaginable. That's unfathomable.
And this was a national news story?
No, this was just, that's not a news story at all.
Oh.
This just happened. This was just a social worker told one of the gals about this girl.
Right.
Okay? But to me, that's like, oh my gosh, that's media bait if I've ever heard of it. Okay? That is really compelling. That tells me something is really, really wrong with this.
Right.
This is not working. And if you can show the media something is really not working and that you have a solution, you have their interest.
You have a story.
You have a story. You've got something to go with. So I just presented to my producer friend like these things. I'm like, this is what I learned, and this is really incredible. The system isn't really working. Now, what they were really interested in having the adoption service come on the media and talk about was how this isn't working, which is what's going to compel people to want to give anyway. Not that they're having a fundraiser and you should come. People don't go to fundraisers for that reason.
Right.
So the idea is look, keep your eye on the news. What's happening wedding related? What's happening entertainment related? Wedding entertainment related?
Proms, high school dances,
seasonal things,
and company parties.
What can you offer? What can you talk about that you're doing that is a solution or a new trend or something new, exciting, or something you're introducing? Something. This is why we always talk about innovate. It's innovation is going to drive attention. It's going to make you stand out, and then you will stand out if you actually are sharing it.
Well, especially when you're talking about cyclical topics on media when it comes to prom season, they always have prom season stories. Weddings, they always have wedding seasons. Company parties around Christmas time, always, all the time. Picnics and things like that. And so there are things that they talk about cyclically on the news on a regular basis. So now they're always talking about those things. And they're always like, when it comes to weddings, what's the thing they're always talking about with weddings? Well, the dress and the decorations and trends that are not oftentimes very different. Now, if you can take what you do and show them that you're going to have a new conversation about an old story around the time that they need new conversations around old stories, then boom, you have something.
Or introduce, what needs to be introduced is the conversation of who creates what happens at a wedding. There's all the conversations about creating the set and the costumes, but there is no conversation really about what's happening and who's making what.
Well, that does speak to one of the things that you can come to around what they don't talk about. But that's not just the only thing. It could be anything. I mean, the last time I got any media, here in the Twin Cities was around, if any of you know who Dave Lewis is, Dave Lewis, a good friend of ours in Hawaii, who did some innovation in that area around doing workshops for grooms. Everybody's talking to brides about how beautiful their wedding was going to be and how to make their wedding pretty and the dress perfect and the hair and makeup and the jewelry and the girls. But nobody was taking the guys aside and saying, okay, guys, there's things you need to know. So he was doing workshops and seminars on how to help the guys be a part of the day. So he talked to me about it and several other people. And when I went to the media here, nobody here was talking about men in weddings. They were all talking about girls in weddings. In fact, it was such a weird thing that there was even a radio talk show that had me on just to be able to challenge me on why should we talk about guys? It really has nothing to do with guys. Right. Guys should step off anyway. It was her whole conversation when I had a chance to talk with her, but it was still media related, got me on the air, got me talking about how important a guy's role is, because that was something that never gets talked about. It doesn't necessarily have to be innovative. It does have to be something that they just have never had the conversation around.
True. I mean,
and you have to have something to say about it.
You're speaking to like introducing a new conversation, and what's even more exciting is something that's contrary to common held beliefs.
Right.
You know what I mean? The common held belief is the wedding is all about the bride, and the groom just really should clean up, take a shower, put on a tux, and show up. And then when you say, well, actually, the groom has to play a much more important role, and you know, we have something for the groom. It's like, well, that's contrary to just what we would like normally think. So then that's exciting and fresh and new to talk about.
And that happened in the wedding cyclical part of the year. I mean, there were 2 places during the year in the Twin Cities where they talk about weddings. So a month, 2 months before is when the press releases go out, and I call those people after I send the press releases and say, hey, did you get that? I've got this story idea. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. Well, the best order to do things just to get the best results is have the email ready to go. Call them, and then after you talk to them, send them the email.
No, I was looking the other way around.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it's like you still got the coverage, but it's like, but if you want to practice, that's going to like increase your odds. Then having the conversation, so they're looking for the email, is going to make a difference. You didn't do anything wrong, Bill. I want to point that out. It's just a matter of like what's going to be the most effective.
Right.
The final thing is make it super easy for them. If you expect the reporter to come up with an angle about why they should write about you, it's not going to happen. In fact, they're not going to become interested to talk to you. If you're really good at making it easy for them to do new and fresh, exciting things to put out, then you're going to become their favorite person.
Right. And that's
you might be the person they call every year.
And that's one of my favorite complaints about the media, and my favorite things that I know about the media that gets me what I want. My favorite complaint about the media is that they seem to be lazy, and that people who will do this and what we're talking about really well can get coverage because they don't really want to do a whole lot. They want you to do all the work and them to take the credit for it. There's very few out there working as hard as they used to back in the 70s when Woodward and Bernstein was out there making stories happen. And that's a favorite complaint of mine. But at the same time,
the staff.
I'm also taking advantage of that. I mean, I know that they're either lazy or overtaxed or a little bit of both. So if I write the story, if I give them the video footage, if I make everything easy enough for them to say, you mean I just say this and I ask you that and you give me video footage and I don't have to do anything more than that? They go, well, yeah, I can go home early. I can hit happy hour earlier because you did all my work for me. So, and we can and will. I mean, it seems brazen, but it does work.
Well, and even like, television too. We're talking a lot about written media, but television media is really terrific. If you have great video, and an example, the example of your situation, you did an Olympic grand entrance right around the time of the Olympics, perfect tie-in, and then of course it was a bonus that somebody from the station was actually in the wedding. That was a bonus too, to make it more like, hey, let's put this in. But even if that person wasn't there, it would have been really exciting and delicious for them to use as a kicker story.
They jumped at it before they knew that somebody from that station was there, so they were like, oh, kicker story around the day that the Olympic opening the grand opening of the Olympics was that day, and we did an Olympic style grand entrance. Yeah, get it to us quick. They changed. They pulled their old kicker story and added this because it was that cyclical
timely
thing,
and relevant, and it all comes from thinking that way. Like, what can I do? Not necessarily what can you do with your clients to create something with press for yourself. I'm not saying that, but like always looking at what's happening. What can I do? How can I fit in? How can what I do that's unique or different fit in to get yourself press?
It could be as simple as you can stand in front of camera answering that question, because they always come with a story, and the story always has a problem that needs an answer. Well, you're the media darling who has the answer. Like the guy with the Ebola thing, they were saying, well, my gosh, we got Ebola like spilling all over in Texas. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he said, well, you're going to have to clean it up, right? And they all went, oh my God, we're going to have to clean it up. Do you know how to clean it up? I sure do.
Right.
And he lied.
Right.
He didn't know how to clean it up. And guess how many television stations and network things that he got on because he was unafraid to step up and say he could. Am I telling you to lie? No. But if a guy can lie and they won't check, you can tell the truth and get media coverage.
Yeah, a media con artist.
Crazy, isn't it?
Is it really crazy? It's kind of like it shouldn't even be possible. But the final thing is, the final thought that I want to offer is that
Tell me, Jerry.
If you do the work,
Jerry,
if you
Jerry,
you can
Jerry,
finally get back
Jerry.
together with that redneck and live happily ever after.
And you are not the father.
Is it if you get creative with this and you make this part of your business plan, part of the work that you do, you submit it, you can make yourself the go-to source every year, where all that work that I told you about really coming up with angles, it'll get to the point where they'll call you.
You'll be in the file. Weddings, we need to talk to Jason.
And we always know that Jason's got something good for us, not just something self-promoting like, hey, I got new lights. Well, that's not a story, and we don't really care. But somebody who really gets what they're trying to do and what they're trying to put out and create something interesting for their listeners and
make it
their
easy on them,
viewers and things like that. And so you could be the one that always calls. Now, mind you, you'll have to keep up with always providing information from that point of view, but there is no better marketing in the world than publicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, none at all. You can't buy it. So tell us, what do you do for publicity? Have you ever gotten publicity? Share with us in the comments down below. We'd love to hear
Absolutely.
from you.
You can tell us in our Facebook page or tweet us on Twitter or any of that stuff.
Right. Any of that. So we'd love to hear from you. What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Or any questions that you might have. Let us know. We can't wait.
Tell everybody about the show, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Broadcasting from high atop planet Earth at a rate of 96 kilobytes sample per second over the interweb in an effort to stop glorifying being busy. This has been an entertainment experience production.